The pen trembled in Emily Carter's hand as she signed the contract. The air in the lawyer's office was heavy with the sterile scent of paper and ink, yet to her it smelled like betrayal. Her mother's face, pale from chemotherapy, floated before her eyes. The debt collectors had already circled like vultures, and the only hand stretched out in help was that of Jason Reeves, Miami's most feared crime boss. He stood across the table, silent, his tailored charcoal suit immaculate. A single gold watch gleamed on his wrist. His expression was unreadable, carved in stone, but his eyes, sharp, dark, dangerous, followed every movement she made. "You sign," the lawyer said without looking at her, voice clipped, businesslike. "The debt is erased. Your mother receives the best treatment." In exchange, he hesitated, as though ashamed to continue. "You are legally married to Mr. Reeves." Emily felt her throat close, but she forced the pen down. The scratch of ink sounded louder than thunder. When she finally lifted her gaze, Jason Reeves' eyes met hers. Cold. Final. "Welcome to your new life," he said, voice smooth as silk over steel. The paper still wet with her signature might as well have been chains clasping around her wrists. The wedding had no cathedral, no music, no white veil. Just a courthouse, 2 signatures, and Jason Reeves' impassive stare. Emily had expected at least a cold luxury, a ceremony to show off his power, but instead it felt like she had been traded in silence, like property changing hands. By evening, a black SUV rolled her to her new home. The oceanfront villa rose before her like a dream twisted into nightmare. White stone walls, endless glass, and terraces spilling over the turquoise water, it could have been paradise, if not for the barbed wire along the walls and the men with earpieces patrolling like shadows. Inside, it smelled of leather and sea salt. The marble floors echoed under her hesitant steps. Cameras blinked red in every corner. Even the wide windows seemed less like freedom, more like display cases of a golden cage. Her phone was taken the moment she crossed the threshold. In its place, Jason's lieutenant placed a sleek black device in her palm. "Only 3 numbers," he said curtly. "Mr. Reeves." "Me." "Emergency." Her heart dropped. No friends. No hospital. No escape. Jason appeared briefly in the hall, removing his jacket, rolling up his sleeves with deliberate precision. He didn't look at her like a husband, more like a strategist arranging pieces on his chessboard. "You'll be safe here," he said, voice low, controlled. "Don't mistake safety for freedom." The words settled on her skin like frost. That night, when the house finally fell quiet, Emily lay on the massive bed that smelled faintly of cedar and smoke. Sleep refused to come. The hum of cameras and the shifting of guards' boots outside her door reminded her that every breath was monitored. And then, the sound. A faint scrape under the door. She sat up, pulse racing, and saw a folded piece of paper slide into the room. Hands shaking, she picked it up. 4 words scrawled in sharp ink. "You're a prisoner. Run while you can." The villa suddenly felt smaller, tighter, as if the walls themselves were leaning closer. She pressed her hand to her chest, trying to steady her heartbeat. And for the first time since signing her name, Emily wondered if she hadn't just sold her freedom to save her mother. She might have signed her own death sentence. The first days inside the villa blurred together. The ocean stretched endlessly outside the glass walls, but Emily felt as if she were underwater, drowning. Guards passed silently in the hallways like wraiths, never meeting her eyes. Jason Reeves himself was a shadow, present in the scent of his cologne clinging to the leather couches, in the faint echo of his voice barking orders into phones, but rarely in the same room with her. She began to think the note had been a cruel joke, a way to break her mind faster than chains could. She hid it beneath the mattress, yet the words burned into her thoughts every time she tried to sleep. "You're a prisoner. Run while you can." It was the third night when reality shattered. Emily was reading on the terrace, the salty breeze barely soothing her nerves, when the world exploded in gunfire. Glass shattered behind her. A man in black slammed into the living room, weapon raised. She froze, breath locked in her throat. "Down," a voice roared, Jason's voice. In seconds, his hand was gripping her wrist, dragging her across the marble floor with terrifying precision. Bullets sang against the walls, sparks dancing from hidden steel reinforcements. Jason shoved her toward a sliding panel disguised as part of the wall. It yawned open to reveal a steel staircase spiraling down into darkness. She stumbled, her bare feet slapping against the cold metal. Jason's body shielded hers, his breath harsh, his movements controlled even as blood stained the sleeve of his white shirt. They descended into the villa's underbelly, a hidden bunker lined with screens, weapon racks, and reinforced doors. Emily collapsed into a chair, chest heaving. Jason locked the steel door behind them, his expression carved from stone, though his arm dripped crimson. "You're hurt," she whispered, instinct pushing her to rise. "It's nothing." His voice was a blade, sharp and unyielding. He stripped off the ruined sleeve, tied a bandage around the wound with calm efficiency, as though pain were irrelevant. The bunker hummed with screens displaying security feeds, masked men swarming the property, guards fighting them back. Jason's men fell, but none hesitated. Outside, paradise had turned to battlefield. Emily's eyes burned as she forced herself to speak. "They're here for me, aren't they?" Jason looked at her then, and for the first time she saw something beyond the mask, a flicker of truth. His gaze was steady, almost pitying. "No," he said quietly. "They're here for me. But you," his eyes lingered on her, softer now, almost regretful. "You are how they'll try to break me." Her stomach dropped. She was not the target, she was the weapon his enemies would use. Jason turned back to the screens, issuing commands into a hidden microphone. His voice was cold, decisive, the voice of a man who orchestrated wars like symphonies. Yet Emily couldn't stop staring at the blood dripping from his hand, at the steel in his jaw. When silence finally fell above them, Jason exhaled slowly. The villa had held, but the cost was written in the dead faces on the screens. Emily's throat tightened with fury, fear, confusion. "You dragged me into this," she spat, rising to her feet. "You signed my life away for your war. My mother is fighting cancer, and now her voice cracked. Now I'm fighting to stay alive because of you." For a long moment he said nothing. Then, with a suddenness that stole her breath, his mask cracked. "You think I wanted this?" His voice thundered, but beneath it was something raw, almost desperate. He stepped closer, shadows clinging to him like armor. "Do you know how long I've protected you from afar? College, your mother's hospital bills, every debt you thought belonged to the world already belonged to me." Emily froze, the words striking harder than bullets. "What are you talking about?" she whispered. Jason's eyes burned with a truth she wasn't ready to face. "This marriage was never about money, Emily. It was the only way to put you where I could keep you safe." Her breath caught. College. The mysterious scholarship. The unexpected extensions of her mother's treatments. The debts that disappeared only to reappear under different names. It had always been him. And yet, the note under her door, the villa under siege, the blood staining his shirt, nothing about this felt like safety. Emily turned away, pressing her trembling hands against the cold steel wall. "You've trapped me, Jason," she whispered, voice breaking. "And now your enemies will kill me just to reach you." Behind her, Jason's silence was heavier than gunfire. When he finally spoke, his words chilled her more than the note ever had. "They'll have to kill me first." Morning broke over Miami with a deceptive calm, the sea outside the villa sparkling as if no blood had been spilled the night before. But inside, the air was brittle, crackling with unspoken words. Emily couldn't look at Jason without feeling the weight of his revelation. She sat in the vast kitchen, untouched breakfast cooling on porcelain. Jason entered, his white shirt crisp again, as if the night's violence hadn't happened. Only the bandage peeking from beneath his cuff betrayed the truth. "You should eat," he said flatly. Her hands clenched around the fork. "Don't tell me what to do." Their eyes collided. His were dark storms, hers burned with fire she didn't know she still had. "Last night you told me you've been watching me," she said, voice trembling but sharp. "Paying for me. Controlling me. Why?" Jason's jaw tightened, but silence wasn't an option anymore. He moved closer, placing both hands on the marble counter as if anchoring himself. "Because you mattered," he said finally, his voice low, dangerous not from menace but from honesty. "Long before you knew my name." Emily shook her head. "You're lying." No, his gaze pierced her, dragging her back in time. "I saw you at university. Second year. You were carrying 2 jobs, falling asleep in class but still writing papers better than half the room. I saw you refuse help from anyone, too proud to admit you were drowning. You reminded me of someone I used to be, before this life." Her heart pounded, unwilling to believe but unable to dismiss the raw truth in his voice. "I paid for nothing you didn't earn," Jason continued. "I just removed the knives at your back. Your tuition. Your mother's first treatments. The debts that would have buried you alive. I bought them because no one else would. Because I couldn't," he broke off, dragging a hand through his dark hair. For the first time, he looked less like a crime lord and more like a man carrying a weight no empire could balance. Emily's throat closed. "So the marriage, it wasn't about debt. It was the only way to make sure you were mine to protect." His voice roughened, and he stepped closer, too close. "You think I trust easily? You think I'd let anyone into this fortress if she didn't mean something?" Her breath caught, anger and fear twisting with something more dangerous, the pull she felt every time his eyes locked on hers. "You ruined my life," she whispered, her voice cracking. "You turned me into bait. A pawn for your enemies." Jason's hand slammed down on the counter, the sound sharp as a gunshot. "No. I saved you from them. And I will keep saving you, even if you hate me for it." Emily flinched at his fury, but there was something else under it, a desperation he couldn't quite mask. The silence between them stretched taut, unbearable. She wanted to scream, to run, to shake him until the mask shattered completely. Instead, she whispered, almost against her will. "Why me?" Jason froze. His eyes softened, shadows and light battling in their depths. His voice, when it came, was barely above a murmur. "Because you were the only thing in this city not poisoned by blood." The words struck like a blade, cutting through her defenses. Emily turned away, clutching the edge of the counter, struggling to steady her breath. His confession should have repulsed her, but instead it ignited something far more dangerous, a fragile thread of understanding. And that terrified her more than the gunfire had. Suddenly, the echo of boots thundered through the hall. One of Jason's men burst into the kitchen, face pale. "Boss," he said, voice taut. "We have a problem." Jason straightened instantly, mask snapping back into place. "Speak." "It's Mendez." The guard swallowed hard. "He's gone. And so is the woman." Emily's blood turned to ice. "What woman?" she demanded. The guard's eyes darted toward her, uneasy. Jason's face hardened, the storm returning full force. "My lieutenant," he growled. "And now, it seems, my traitor." Emily's pulse spiked. She understood even before Jason turned to her, his expression like carved stone. Whoever Mendez was, wherever he had gone, he had taken something. Or someone. And Emily suddenly knew her nightmare had only just begun. The villa felt colder after the betrayal. Guards doubled at every entrance, cameras recalibrated, Jason's voice barking orders into phones with clipped fury. Emily could feel the storm in him, the kind that swallowed cities whole. She tried to keep to the library, the only room that didn't feel like a cell. But even there, shadows crept too close. Every sound in the corridor made her pulse spike. She knew the walls were fortified, that Jason's men watched every angle, and yet, the memory of masked intruders tearing through her world left her raw, sleepless. It happened at dusk, the hour when the sea glowed gold and everything looked deceptively calm. Emily had just placed a book back on the shelf when the lights flickered. Power cut. The hum of surveillance vanished, plunging the villa into eerie silence. Her first instinct was to run toward the hallway, but a hand clamped over her mouth before she could scream. She fought, thrashing, but another set of arms pinned her. The sharp scent of sweat and leather filled her nose. "Quiet, Mrs. Reeves," a voice hissed against her ear. "Or this will be worse than it has to." Panic thundered through her veins. Jason's guards should have been here, but she heard nothing. No footsteps, no shouts. Just silence. Dragged through back corridors, she caught glimpses of familiar walls, now alien in the dark. One of the men wore Jason's insignia on his jacket. Her blood froze. One of his own. They forced her into a van waiting beyond the outer gates. Tires screeched. The villa shrank behind them, the ocean swallowing its lights. Emily's pulse hammered as duct tape sealed her wrists, her mouth. Through the blur of tears, she caught the traitor's face in the rearview mirror. Mendez. Jason's lieutenant. The man who had once bowed to her husband with loyalty carved into his features. "Don't bother crying," Mendez said coldly, turning to meet her gaze. His eyes glinted with something cruel, something almost triumphant. "You're not leaving here until Reeves is finished. They'll tear this city apart before he finds you." The van jostled down unfamiliar streets, into a part of Miami Emily had never seen, warehouses with rusted doors, streets where even the streetlights seemed afraid to shine. When they finally stopped, rough hands yanked her out. Inside the warehouse, the air was thick with gasoline and mildew. A dozen men loomed in the shadows, weapons glinting under broken fluorescent lights. At the center stood a man with scars twisting across his face, his smile jagged and sharp. "So this is the queen in Reeves' little castle," he said, stepping closer. His breath smelled of smoke and blood. "I expected more, but then again, beauty has many uses." Emily tried to scream against the tape, but only muffled sounds escaped. The scarred man chuckled, circling her like a predator. He built walls, cameras, guards, but he forgot the simplest truth. Even kings bleed when you take their women. He grabbed her chin, forcing her eyes to his. "You are his weakness, Mrs. Reeves. And he will burn for you." Her knees buckled. Mendez watched silently from the corner, arms crossed, betrayal written in his stillness. The men shoved her into a chair, ropes cutting into her skin. The warehouse doors closed with a groan, sealing her in darkness pierced only by dim bulbs. Minutes bled into hours. Somewhere outside, trucks rumbled, men shouted, the world of Jason Reeves' enemies moving with purpose. Emily fought to steady her breathing, but fear clawed at her throat. Finally, the scarred man returned. He crouched before her, eyes glittering. "Do you know what he will do when he learns you're here?" he asked softly. "He will come. He always does. And when he does," his smile widened into something monstrous. "He will watch you die before we kill him." Emily's heart crashed against her ribs. She wanted to believe Jason would come, that the storm in his eyes meant more than cold control. But Mendez's mocking voice echoed in her skull, "He won't save you." The words repeated like a curse as the night stretched on, and Emily realized that for the first time since signing her name, she might truly die because of it. The night Emily disappeared, Miami changed. Jason Reeves did not rage, did not break furniture or curse the heavens. He became silent. Too silent. His men said later they had never seen him like that, calm, precise, the calm of a hurricane's eye. By dawn, fire consumed half the docks. Warehouses burned in orange towers, their flames mirrored in the bay. Trucks belonging to rival families vanished, only to be found days later as twisted metal husks. One by one, names that had whispered against Reeves went silent, their bodies never discovered. The city trembled under his war. But none of it mattered to Jason. His empire could fall to ash as long as Emily lived. Every call, every lead, every informant was squeezed until they bled truth. On the third night, a phone rang in the villa. Jason answered, voice a blade drawn in darkness. "Come alone," the caller sneered. "Warehouse by the river. If you want your wife breathing." Click. Jason Reeves did not hesitate. The warehouse was a ruin of rusted steel and flickering lights. Inside, Emily was tied to a chair, her wrists raw from rope. Her heart stuttered when she heard the echo of boots, the heavy rhythm she now knew by instinct. Jason stepped into the light, black suit immaculate, a gun in his hand. His presence shifted the air, controlled, lethal, inevitable. The scarred rival smirked, dragging Emily forward by the hair. "So it's true," he said, voice like gravel. The untouchable Reeves came running. For her. Jason's eyes burned into him, cold fury carved into every line of his face. "Let her go." The rival laughed. "She's your weakness. Everyone knows it now. Without her, you are nothing." He pressed a knife to Emily's throat. Her breath caught, fear choking her. She wanted to scream, to beg Jason not to risk himself, but her voice was gone. Jason raised his gun, steady. "Touch her, and you die screaming." The room filled with tension, men circling with weapons raised. And then, before she could stop herself, Emily's voice finally broke free. "Jason," she cried, chest heaving. All eyes turned to her. Her gaze locked on him, fierce, defiant. "I choose him. I love him. Do you hear me? I love him." The words shocked the room. Even Jason's composure flickered for an instant, his eyes widening. The rival's smirk faltered. For a man like Reeves, for a woman like Emily to claim love in a moment of death, it cut deeper than bullets. That hesitation cost him. Jason moved like lightning, a single shot tearing through the silence. The rival collapsed, eyes wide, blood spilling across the floor. Chaos erupted. Gunfire exploded from every corner, Jason's men pouring in like shadows. The warehouse became a storm of bullets and screams. Emily ducked, the ropes loosening in the confusion. Jason fought like a man possessed, his fury precise, every shot a promise. When the last enemy fell, silence returned, broken only by the drip of blood onto concrete. Jason strode to her, pulling her into his arms. For the first time, his mask slipped completely. His voice was rough, almost broken. "You're alive," he whispered against her hair. "They didn't take you from me." Emily clung to him, her tears wetting his shirt. For the first time, she wasn't just afraid of him. She was afraid of what she felt, of how, in that moment, Jason Reeves wasn't her captor, wasn't her enemy. He was the only man in the world who would burn a city to ashes just to keep her breathing. And the terrifying truth was, she wanted him. The war ended not with peace, but with silence. Miami's underworld lay scorched, its balance of power broken. And at the center stood Jason Reeves, his empire bloodied but unshaken, because he had won her back. Emily had expected to feel only relief after her rescue. Instead, she carried confusion heavier than the ropes that once bound her. She should have hated him for chaining her life to his. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw the warehouse lit by gunfire, Jason stepping through it like a storm, killing and bleeding for her. Days passed before he finally came to her. She found him on the terrace, the ocean glittering below, his glass untouched on the table. For once, there were no guards in earshot. "You're free," Jason said quietly, his voice stripped of command. "If you want to walk away, I'll erase every tie, every debt. No one will touch you. Not even me." Emily's chest tightened. She had dreamed of freedom, of leaving his shadow. But the thought of a world without him now, it felt hollow. She remembered the way he had whispered her name when she was in his arms, the way his mask had cracked when he thought she might die. Slowly, she shook her head. "I'm not leaving." Jason's eyes lifted to hers, dark and searching, as if he couldn't believe the words. "Not as your prisoner," Emily continued, voice steady. "Not as your weakness. If I stay, it's because I choose it. Because I will stand beside you, not beneath you." For a long moment, the silence stretched. Then, for the first time since she had met him, Jason Reeves smiled, not cold, not calculated, but raw, almost vulnerable. He reached for her hand, and this time, she didn't pull away. 2 weeks later, the crime families of Miami gathered in a chandelier-lit hall, their voices hushed with unease. Jason Reeves entered, Emily on his arm in a black silk dress that shimmered like midnight. No longer a pawn, no longer a hostage, she walked with him as an equal. "This is Emily Reeves," Jason announced to the room, his voice carrying the weight of fire and blood. "My wife. My partner. My queen." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Rivals measured her, allies bowed their heads. And Emily, for the first time, did not feel like a prisoner. She felt like fire wrapped in silk, a woman whose choice had reshaped a kingdom. But as Jason's hand tightened around hers, she couldn't shake the memory of that first note under her door. "You're a prisoner. Run while you can." Now she wondered if it hadn't been a warning about Jason's enemies, but about Jason himself. And in her heart, Emily knew one truth: she had stepped willingly into a golden cage. The locks were gone, but the walls remained. The ocean outside roared like a promise of storms yet to come.